If you are someone who speaks everything that comes to your mind, if you share every thought, every opinion, every rumor, then this story might change your life. Because sometimes one careless word can destroy trust forever. And sometimes the greatest wisdom in life is silence. This is the story of a man who learned that lesson too late. Many years ago, in a small kingdom surrounded by forests and rivers, there lived a man named Raghav. Raghav was not a bad person. He was friendly, cheerful, and very talkative. In fact, people in the village often said, Raghav can speak more in 1 hour than others speak in a whole day. Wherever he went, market, temple, farms, he always had something to say. News, gossip, opinions, rumors. Sometimes people listened. Sometimes they simply smiled and walked away. But Raghav had one habit. He spoke first and thought later. One afternoon, Raghav returned from a nearby town. On the road, he heard 2 travelers whispering something. They said the king of the kingdom was very sick. They wondered if the king might die soon. But the travelers were not sure. It was only a rumor. However, Raghav's mind was already excited. Before confirming anything, before checking the truth, he rushed into the village and loudly announced in the marketplace, "Did you hear the news? Our king is dead." The villagers were shocked. People began whispering. Women cried. Farmers stopped working. The whole village believed Raghav's words because he sounded so confident. But there was one problem. The king was not dead. A few days later, royal soldiers passed through the village. They brought a message. The king was alive, healthy, and ruling the kingdom as usual. The villagers suddenly realized the truth. Raghav had spread false information. People felt angry and embarrassed. One old villager said, "From today, never trust this man's words." Another villager said, "A man who speaks without thinking destroys truth." Slowly, the villagers stopped listening to Raghav. When he spoke, people ignored him. For the first time in his life, Raghav felt the pain of losing trust. 2 days later, something terrible happened. The king was murdered by unknown enemies in the palace. This time, the news was real. But when the villagers heard the news, they remembered Raghav's earlier rumor. Some villagers began whispering, "Maybe Raghav knew something. Maybe he's involved. Why did he announce the king's death earlier?" Suspicion started spreading. Soon the entire village began to doubt him. Raghav was terrified. He knew he had done nothing wrong, but his careless words had created a dangerous situation. One night, Raghav quietly left the village. He walked for hours until he reached a deep forest. There were no markets, no villagers, no gossip, no one to talk to. Only trees, wind, birds, and silence. Days passed. For the first time in his life, Raghav had no one to speak with. At first, it felt painful. He wanted to talk, but there was nobody to listen. Slowly, something strange happened. Raghav began observing nature. Birds spoke only when necessary. Animals made sounds only for a purpose. The forest itself remained silent most of the time, yet everything in the forest worked perfectly. In that silence, Raghav began thinking about his life. He remembered the day he spread the rumor. He remembered the villagers losing trust. He remembered how one careless sentence changed everything. And then he understood a powerful truth. Silence protects wisdom. Speaking without thinking destroys it. One evening, Raghav sat beside a quiet river in the forest. For the first time in his life, he spoke very slowly, not loudly, not carelessly. He said to himself, "I spoke thousands of words in my life, but never understood their weight. One wrong sentence destroyed my reputation. If I had stayed silent that day, my life would be different. From that moment, Raghov made a promise. He would speak only when necessary, only when his words were truthful and useful. Sometimes the strongest person in the room is the one who knows when to stay silent. Words are powerful. Once they leave your mouth, you can never take them back. So before speaking, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If not, silence is wiser. If this story made you think about the power of silence, remember this. Sometimes the best response in life is no response at all. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful life lessons, because one small story sometimes can change the way we live our entire life.